Okay, we're recording. We're in business. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Everyone's week okay on a scale of 1 to 10?
It's pretty
9.
good.
Not 9.
Wow,
Wow. Hey,
Nice.
and look at that. Stephanie just joined the waiting room.
Nice.
Hey, hi, Steph.
Hey.
Perfect
Hey, Steph.
timing again, as usual.
Right on
I
time.
heard you talking about me.
Your ears were burning.
Itchy.
I need my hands to start itching.
Spider senses. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a pretty good week. I think it was exciting to meet all the people for the new site. But yeah, so thanks everyone again for showing up for Weekly Sync. So I guess now, so I don't know if you all remember. So at least on my screen, he's over here. Is Andrew.
Oh, you're pointing.
I
You
think-
both are pointing right at me. That's weird.
Yeah, our lovely founder of Collab Lab will be doing our learning module today. But I just wanted to be like, oh yeah, another person in the group for today.
Mhm.
So
Hi, everybody.
yeah. And I guess we can start off with demos.
Yeah. Cool. So who would like to go first? Which pair would like to?
We got it.
All right.
Oh, we got it? All right, let's do it.
We hit the track like the baby.
Yeah.
Let's go. I should have that queued up. But for
I
those
wish
who
I
know,
could be a fly on the wall for y'all's like pairing sessions. I bet it's hilarious.
You sure, girl? You sure? All right. So, AC. I was ready until I wasn't. AC. So, we had to display a text field above the shopping list, which we have seen tons of times. Then, as they're typing, it should narrow to only what you're trying to see. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Then you should be able to tap on some type of UI element. They requested an X. It could be anything, but something that makes sense. And when the field has text in it, it leaves. Clear, dot clear, whatever you choose. So the filter text should match any part of the main item. So roast chicken and chicken should both match with chicken. Let's see if that's true. I didn't ask roast chicken. Or so. Give me a second. For the sake. All right. Roast chicken. Didn't make it. Whatever. Point is, here we go. I have a lot of other duplicates. So here we go. So what we're going to do is do meal. Oh, two things are loading. No, we're going to do milk. And so as you can see, as we are typing, so we are hitting that. And if you say, okay, I don't want any of that anymore, then you remove that. The same thing works for, I thought this one was interesting. Apples versus giving you apples and pineapples. So there's that. And that's that. And now Brandon will show you the behind the scenes of how it's done.
Sweet. All right. Let me jump over to screen here. All right, everybody seeing? Oh no!
Yeah.
Perfect. What? All right. So the way, just for a quick refresher, the way that we're populating that list of items to begin with, if I recall, this is like Volha, and I don't remember who did it as well, is that we use anon snapshots from Firebase so we could get the real-time updates, and then we set unfiltered items here, right? So this is our state. And then what we wanted to do was that we wanted to make a filter that would compare whatever we put inside of our search bar with whatever was inside of unfiltered items. So in this case, our shopping list, right? For that, Here we go. So if you see here, input, there we go. We made sure to set the value as search data, and on change, we have our very standard handle change function, right? And search data in this case is yet another hook. So we have just yet some more state. And what we did is we dynamically set search data states to whatever's being typed. Pretty simple stuff, event.target.value. We know that works. Now, how we did this to actually get the filter now was that I did a use effect on whenever search data gets changed. So whenever the value updates. And Stephanie helped me out with this one a lot because we did a for each here. That was on Stephanie. This definitely helps a lot to actually get the individual names here.
This is a team thing that we have here.
Yeah, you know it is. I had to give you a little, you know.
We are a group. We are together.
Yeah.
We are a pair.
So how we worked here was that we just made sure that unfiltered, we just forgive us the repeated kind of name and conventions here. Honestly, at the time, I was kind of like, I'm an engineer, I'm going to name this terribly, we'll fix it later. So unfiltered array here. And then what we did was that we pretty much did a push of each element on the array. So kind of like our own style of doing a map, I guess. But what we also did while pushing it to the array is that we actually ran a filter right here. So we just set the variable of unfiltered array, and we're just comparing whatever is being pushed inside of here with whatever is being filtered from our search data. So it's just comparing our search bar with whatever's put inside of this array. And then we obviously did a little to lowercase. I was messing around with some like trim as well to get rid of white space, but we already have an implementation working beforehand with the regex that Stephanie also showed. So we'll implement that later, I think. Once that's done, what we did is we just set our filtered items. So once again, another state, we set our filtered items to the results of our filter. Who would have seen that coming? And from here, we have our conditional rendering. So how it works is that if our search data now is empty, it's going to show us our unfiltered items, which was what we got here from the initial listener from Firebase. But if anything adds inside of our search data, well, then we're going to get our filtered items. And we just map it out to maintain the exact same layout as before. And yeah, other than that, so that's how it works functionality to produce whatever's being rendered or whatever's matching, I guess. And then just for a little something we did for this part with the rendering of the button. Again, we just added very simple, just a conditional renderer. And we did the same thing with search data.length. And we just gave it a little class name if it's invisible or not. That's pretty much it. So
yeah, key point, never do search data dot length less than 0. You know, like
yeah, maybe we try to like avoid that.
It's like the obvious. I just don't do that.
It's kind of unrelated to like the AC for the story, but I'm noticing y'all are sticking pretty heavy to the BEM CSS style, the block element modifier pattern. I really like seeing that pattern. I think it's super helpful.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I only like recently picked it up, so like I've been trying to implement it a little bit more intentionally and stuff I do till it gets like muscle habit. I think the whole thing of having the modifiers especially is like super nice.
Totally. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Good to see that. I also think too the application looks really cool with your styles and everything.
Yeah, it looks so clean already without doing anything yet. You know, like doing a lot. So I really like it.
Totally. All right, Kathy and Volha, do you want to go ahead and take the stage?
All right, sounds good. Let's see here really quickly. Let me share my screen this time. Remember, you know, that's always key. I remember this time, Stephanie, thank you. right, let's see here. Oh, let me change this and then we'll share this. 2 seconds. Okay. You should be seeing a screen share, I would
Yep.
like to think.
Yep.
Should be able to see the issue in the Firestore. Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, so starting off with the issue, our problem was in order for the application to learn how often an item needs to be purchased, the number of days until the next purchase date, in order for the application to learn how often an item needs to be purchased, the number of days until the next purchase or the next estimated purchase date needs to be calculated and recorded within the database. So our approach to that was, in order to address the problem, we decided to leverage, because that's part of the AC, the calculate estimate function, and modify the item object and begin to track the necessary elements in order to calculate the next estimate purchase date. You'll see that through if you walk through the whole step or start the process from the beginning by creating a new shopping list. Once you have a new shopping list, you'll be able to track your token. We'll also need to add an item so that the token will actually show up in the Firestore. And my go-to is generally always coffee, because caffeine is incredibly important. It's my lifeblood. So we should be able to look for, what is that? For this token, we'll just look for it. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that. You'll have to bear with me. Sometimes my connection's a little off, so I've got to refresh a couple times. While that's refreshing, I'm going to go ahead and mark the item. Oh, maybe it came through. I'm going to mark the item as purchased, just because for the sake of time, maybe we'll give it one more chance and see. I tested it out before, but not with the Zoom call. So you never know how that also plays with the internet. But here we have it now. So we can see the fields that we added in terms of last estimate, last purchase date, latest interval, next purchase interval, number of purchases. And then the resupply period was already there, as we indicated, as soon. So you'll see some zeros now. We opted to default it to 0 and then to modify it upon the item being marked as purchased. I've got to do a refresh over here, sorry, forget that part. Now we can mark the item as purchased. If you have great internet, I was gonna say it'll pop up automatically. Love when that happens. So for the sake of testing it, since we don't have any items truly being tracked that have previous purchase dates, and for the sake of the demo, what we opted to do is to kind of go back in and modify the purchase date. So we'll pick something a little further in the past, back in August, and update it. You'll see the date's been changed. I'll also refresh over here, and we'll be able to mark the item as purchased for a second time. And you'll notice some of these zeros and number of purchases, item has changed from 0 to 1. And shortly, excuse me, you'll also see, I'll refresh it since it has an automatic, there it was. I should have had a little bit more patience. You'll see that the number of purchases changed to 2. Our next purchase interval is now 11, and our latest interval is 32. We're now just waiting for the last estimate, and the way the calculate estimate function works, we need to actually backdate the purchase a third time, and have a third purchase for it to really fill that final element in. So I'll refresh over here as well. We'll be able to mark it purchased again for a third time. And then I'm going to have a little patience this time. Yes. And now you'll see that finally the last 0 is updated, and last estimate is now 11. And the interval has also changed based on the date that I selected. Because previously it was, I think, September 1st, and now today is the 6th. So it's doing the calculation each time based off of that period. So that's probably all of the UI section. I will hand it over to Voha so you can kind of take a glimpse behind the shade, or the curtain, and actually see the code.
Yeah, sounds great. Let's go into nuts and bolts of it. So, okay, so we've been given an estimate function as a part of our library, and estimate function requires a few inputs, which is last estimate, the last estimated purchase interval, the latest interval, which is the number of days between the most recent purchase and purchase, and the number of purchases. So pretty much just a counter for total number of purchases, as we saw in the demonstration earlier. To stay consistent in our logic, we had to update our add item component. We had to add all those new variables and set it to 0, so we would not have an error later on where some of the items would have those values and some of the items wouldn't. And we also had to update it in a database, so we just pass it along with the rest of the items, with the rest of the parameters. We also had to modify the listener itself. When it gets the update from the database, it would pass the values as props to our item component, which would actually display and hold on information on them. So let's go back to our item component. Okay, and that's where the magic happens. When the user clicks on item to select it as purchased, inside of the function, we are updating our counter for the number of purchases. We are also doing the logic for updating the latest interval. And the way we do it, we calculate the difference between today's dates and the previous value of last purchase date, and we divide it by the amount of seconds, the number of seconds that there is in 24 hours to get the dates, and we take a ceiling of it, so we get the actual date and not day, and not like day and a half or day 0.4, stuff like that. Then we go to calculate the next purchase estimate date, and it is done using the function provided in our estimates file, which was already given to us. And then after we completed it and got all the values, we are updating them in a database. So the data syncs consistently, and next time we click on the item, the values get updated as well. Thank you.
Good work. This issue is always a tricky one, just because you can kind of think of it as like, this is your first time you're integrating with a third party. You can kind of think of it as like a third party software. In this case, it's the estimation script. So y'all came with us with like really clear questions when this week started, and that's always a good sign when your questions are very clear and concise when the work starts. So you're not doing all this work and then you're like, oh, I actually, if I would have asked questions earlier, it would have saved me a lot of time. But y'all nailed it. So fantastic job as usual.
Great job. I'm wondering, the only thing that I saw was in the component where you're individually assigning all the props, if there's no naming conventions, I think if you're changing the structure of your Firebase a lot, it might help if you pass the props off as a destructuring of the object, so that you don't have to individually rename each and every single prop over and over again. So that's just one suggestion. But other than that, everything else is really great.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point and something that we should do to optimize the code. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, I feel like also what would have been helpful or will be helpful. So what was not mentioned in the code thing is the whole test component. So I connected the context and put Firebase in context, and it's on the and then wrapped it around the index. That way we could all just have the list. What was it? It was, we wanted to have the list, and then token. The token. Yeah. So that way we don't have to continue to look for the token or the list. And those should be like the only two things that are like consistent for everybody. But that code is like there. Um, it's there. It works. There's even on the test page it says this works. That's how you know it works.
That's how you know it works. Okay.
I mean, I guess it should show the list, but you get the principle.
Yeah.
And so instead of keeping going to the listener, because at this point our listener looks crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, wild west right now.
Yeah. So that was like the restructure, rather than just be like a restructure idea. It's like, okay, let's put this into place, but then hold it, and okay, let's get the rest of the logic for what we had to do for the rest of our ACs, and that was all yesterday. And what I spent the rest of the time doing in between was all of that other stuff, which is not how you're supposed to do things. You're supposed to restructure after you get the regular stuff done. But it got done.
No, yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, what really helped past teams that I was on was that we would all four of us would meet together for like any big structural changes, so that everyone was on the same page and there weren't too many merge conflicts. If everyone has time for that next week.
We were literally talking about that last night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
perfect. Right. On the same page.
Yes, we pair program and we pair wine.
Sounds like,
you know what I
mean? So like our code and coffee, but you can bring wine, or a code and cocktail.
Wine and
so
code and a code and a beverage.
Code and chamomile tea.
Code and a beverage.
Or
because especially on Thursday at 4, it's 4 o'clock for you guys, but it's like 7 for me. So it'll definitely be an adult beverage.
We can throw it in the Slack too if y'all want to change coffee and code to a different day. But
code and Coolies, yeah.
No, it works for me. Steph, is that on the branch that you and Brandon created with your last AC?
It's there.
Yeah.
What is it? The list
so
filter? Okay, cool.
So it's not completely fleshed out. Like, so actually doing the list and the token is not there, but the Firebase connection is there. So all you have to do, and it's already wrapped around the index. I made a separate test component and folder just to get that whole logic for how you would pass it through. So there's that as a playground for whatever. And then we could say, okay, this is what we want. Now let's take this and put it somewhere else. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to just put it on what we had. It was like, let's just abstract this out, get what we need, and me wrapping like the consumer, the provider, like me wrapping all that type of stuff changes nothing. Like you didn't have to mention it. It didn't matter because it was just something that exists. However, that Firebase connection, that way we, even at the very least, like you shouldn't have to connect to Firebase again. Like, right. Hey, you shouldn't have to go get the list again. Like, so we already have the list, we already have the tokens, and because there's 2 different ways of doing the tokens, and there's all kinds of ways of doing the list. So that way we already have it. And we can also merge our previous AC and with the clean input going in and the clean input going out. I think what we call it, clean output.
Yeah, something again, horrible names.
Like, that makes sense. Like clean input, clean output. But I didn't even think about clean output. We just like copy the same regex.
Yeah.
So it just enabled I think what Jen's talking about, which is coming together and like everybody, I'm gonna say everybody. So that's what took me so long to talk. Coming together and saying, okay, these architectural decisions, because right now everybody's using the listener, and it's gonna break.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's already broke. It's because
it's super fragmented.
We use the listener. Well, we can't all use the listener. Like, essentially, the listener is now a search. I'm like, we might as well just copy all of the code from there and put it into search.
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving these conversations with like these refactors. Hey, I think you muted too, Seth, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, hello.
I
But
don't know
yeah.
what I missed, but you get the point.
Yeah, no, that's a really good
Great
idea, and I really
ideas.
like, yeah, you all are going that direction. So that's really great. We can talk more about it in Slack. Great demos, everyone.
Yeah, good job, y'all.
And on Thursday.
Yeah.
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 coffee
Yeah,
with-
I feel like it's not really a Slack conversation. Like it's because the architecture.
Or like, I mean, like, throw it in the Slack to get the meeting up, to meet together, to talk about it. Yeah. So
I love the thumbs up thing.
Oh, the thumbs up emotion.
I think
Yeah.
Zoom is missing the beat. Like there should be so many more reactions. Like they could really. They're missing.
yeah, like on
that,
Instagram or
win
something.
right there.
Let me tell you what I don't like.
Or
This
even
thing-
like the tap backs. At least give me the 4 or something.
Well, I don't like that you cannot change the hand color of the praise hands. Like I feel like that is completely.
I know.
Wait, mine are different, aren't they?
No, not the prayer hands. I'm about the ones like this. It's only one
yes,
color.
you mean in an Apple emoji? Okay, my bad.
Not in the okay.
No, I know
all
what
the
you're talking about.
emojis.
I was thinking about these aren't prayer hands; these are clap hands. So I misunderstood what you were saying. Sorry.
Oh no, I was taking this moment to air my grievance.
That's funny.
My job as is to be the class clown. That's it. Everybody plays their role strong.
Yeah,
That's right.
and we love you for it.
It's not intentional, actually. It's just I was just like, I saw the thumbs up, and it just made me upset again. I'm like, you know what? There's no reason how if I pick a skin tone, why this can't adjust. You can adjust a person sitting behind a laptop, but you cannot adjust prayer hands.
All right.
Yeah.
Like black people don't have prayer hands like this. Literally, what?
That's wild.
The nerve. So yeah.
That's why you need to have diverse teams, so the issue could have been caught before it went into production.
Exactly.
Is there a GitHub for like the emoji? Like
Well, that's the thing is like then you go get your own, but then the other person doesn't have it, so they see nothing. It's kind of like Android users where we just see like I don't know what it is that you were trying to get across, but I'll use context clues for these emojis because they just come through as X's with a box, and I'm like, oh okay, yay, because that's what you say, right?
All right. Andrew, are you all set up for the module?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Y'all ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We're going to talk about communication
Oh yes.
for devs. So, yeah, this is communication is key. It's really, and it really is. It's the kind of thing that sets you apart. Like a lot of people who are good coders and stuff, but clearly because we have a whole program around it, we believe that the people, it's one thing you have to be technically strong to be a good developer, to be a good programmer. You also have to be a good communicator in order to be able to collaborate and get things done on a team. So this is the kind of thing that, the better you are at it, it's gonna just increase your ceiling later in your career. You can move on to be a senior developer or kind of a staff engineer and these kinds of things because you're a good communicator. Because communication, especially if you're on a remote team, is incredibly important to influencing the direction of the organization or just getting projects done in general. So we're going to talk about 3 things here. We're going to talk about documentation, pull requests, comments, and code. So those, you'll notice those are all kind of written communication. Verbal communication, like what you just did, those demos were buttoned up. They were great, really just tight. Each person had a role and kind of stuck to the thing that they were trying to present. And yeah, I was really impressed with that. So y'all got that in hand. So we'll talk about the written stuff in the presentation. But yeah, let's start with documentation. So documentation is really important for a bunch of reasons. I mean, it's kind of thing where you can, you do something, you build something, and 6 months later, somebody asks you to go back and fix a bug, and you're like, okay, what did I do again? You know, like if you have this stuff documented, if you kind of write down, you know, if you document things about, you know, kind of like how the thing works, why the decisions were made, all those kinds of things, it makes it that much easier to go back later, and kind of get the context to be able to make changes or improvements. Writing things down also helps you learn. It's just the act, you know, it's the way the human brain works. You know, you can think about something and think you have it, but if you write it down, it kind of forces it into a different part of memory in your brain. So it's really good for just kind of making you think through, like if you have to articulate it in words, then just helps you kind of structure those thoughts. So it's really good too for, again, kind of later down the road, you know, if you know, you do something and there were probably really good reasons why an approach was taken, you know, you can, if it's documented, then it's a lot easier to go back and have a conversation like, oh yeah, that's why we did that. I've been in that situation a lot where, you know, you kind of do something and you're, you know, for the life of you, you can't, you know, no one remembers like what the decision was that was made in the meeting or something, right? So if you know, you write those things down, it just makes it easier for everybody. And then when new people join the team, having good documentation around, you know, not only the code itself, but team processes, all those kinds of things, having that stuff written down just makes it that much easier for new people to kind of acquire the context they need to be able to contribute. So really good for that purpose. And avoiding institutional knowledge. So that's sort of like, you know, if you've ever worked in a place where, you know, something's not written down, but you know who knows it. Like, you know, a thing will come up and like, oh, ask so-and-so. That's probably something that should be written down because so-and-so isn't, so-and-so is gonna go on vacation at some point. So-and-so could leave the company. You know, there's a bunch of reasons why, you know, that's basically knowledge or information that, you know, would benefit everybody if it wasn't just sitting in somebody's head. So, and then just the last point is just that it empowers everybody. So having things documented means, you know, you're not at the mercy of other people who hold the knowledge. You know, it's really, you know, it's kind of empowers everybody to have all the information and context that they need to do their jobs. So yeah, documentation is super important for all those reasons. So a couple of little tips here is they are to write for the person who knows the least. So you know, when I ask someone to explain something to me, sometimes at work I'll say, imagine that I am infinitely smart and have zero knowledge of this thing. You know, so like if you kind of write for the person who, you know, in your organization who you imagine knows the least about the problem set or has the least context, you know, it's going to work for everybody. People with more context can skim over things, but the people that really don't have any of the context are still going to be able to kind of ramp up. But then you optimize for a person who needs a quick reference. So that's really more of a formatting thing. So look at sort of how React Router, their documentation is set up. So this is a pretty common format these days. I think this is probably a standard package that they've used to create the documentation. But you know, it's just really clear. So you have a very clear header, you know, some subheaders, you know, links to important pieces of information, and then, you know, actual code examples. You know, so, you know, it has an example of nested routing, and so right next to it, you know, it has a little explanation, but then right next to it is actual code that you can see. So really nice. Just, you know, kind of randomly jump into some things, but basically, you know, it's all kind of linked, so you can kind of go and get the source information and everything. So this is very professional and buttoned up sort of code documentation. You know, it kind of relies on your company or organization having some kind of package like this that's set up to write documentation. But these, you know, I think this particular one is free to use. So, you know, if you can, you know, if you're working somewhere and you're like, we need better documentation, let's use this tool. Hopefully they're open to letting you use something like that. All right, pull requests. So y'all been doing pull requests the last few weeks. I don't know how much experience you had with pull requests before you started Collab Lab, but they are sort of, I mean, it's sort of how software gets built these days. Pull requests are not, that's not a native thing to Git itself. Git is the actual tool that manages the source code. GitHub is a layer on top of that that adds these social features. So pull requests is something that GitHub sort of invented, but it's super useful. You know, the way that you write your pull request, it gives the reviewers of the code context for reviewing the code. So, you know, in the app here, what we're doing is, you know, the universe is pretty small, and you've seen most of the code. You have your heads around all of it. But you can imagine, like you know, it's Zapier. Like this happens, I mean, probably every single day, where they write something, and it's, you know, it touches, like there are dependencies between systems and that kind of thing, and there's a piece of the code that touches some other piece of the code. And so you know that your part works, but you don't know necessarily all the knock-on effects of it. And so you have to pull someone in from another group to review your code. So they can say, yeah, this is going to be okay with what we have, or no, you need to change this API or something like that. So in writing the PR, you can actually, you know, define what you know, the expected behaviors of the code that you wrote, kind of try to explain to them what the interface is to this other system. You can like just give all the context that somebody else looking at the code is going to need to you know, more quickly sort of zero in on the important parts of the PR. So it's super helpful. I'll talk in a minute about some sort of more specific tips, but a big part of a lot of interviewing processes is actually talking through your code, walking people through your code. And so, you know, I know that Stacy made this deck, and she interviewed on my team, and what we'd had her do was walk through PRs. Like that was literally the technical part of her interview, was to take us through, because she'd been, you know, submitting PRs at Zapier for a while before we interviewed her. So she had sort of a body of work, and we just had her walk us through and explain, you know, what are the decisions you made and why, like how did you come to do things in the way you did. And because she had written such great PRs over the year that she was doing that, she was able to go back even to older code and, you know, kind of reorient herself to what had happened, and then be able to explain it to us effectively enough to get hired onto my team. So yeah, it's PRs are, you know, it is how developers interface with each other these days too, right? So super important. So what are some ways that you can kind of make your PRs shine? So screenshots, GIFs, videos, using those appropriately to just, I mean, a lot of us are pretty visual people. So, you know, using those to help someone zero in on the thing that you want them to pay attention to is helpful. Sometimes a GIF for, you know, sort of like an interaction, like say you have a drop-down menu or something, and it shifts when you roll over part of it or something like that. If you have a little GIF that just shows that happening, it tells the person kind of what to look for in the interface. Videos are really nice for when, you know, it's just sometimes simpler to, you know, to screen share and to explain what's happening as opposed to try to describe it with, you know, lines and lines of text. So those are all really effective things to do. Oops, whoa, wait, go back. All right. And then linking to resources and linking into the actual code that you're referencing is another really nice practice. So sometimes, you know, like say, I mean, with the estimates JS thing, you can say, okay, we integrated this file, and you could actually link to the file, so it's easy for the person to kind of jump over and just see the file by itself. You can also link to, here's a section of code, you know, where we did this for this reason, or another thing, well, the self-review part, you can actually kind of go through and you could link to code and say, you know what, I did this thing, I'm not super confident about it, there might be a better way, and ask the reviewer, kind of prompt them to kind of open up that, you know, that channel of communication for them to, you know, help you make that part of the code a little better. So yeah, the self-review process is actually a really nice way to make sure that your PR kind of provides everything you think it does when you're first writing it down, if you know what I mean. So we'll look at this. So here's an example of a PR. This is from TCL3, so going back a little ways. But it does some things nicely. It actually doesn't have, it's not very visual. It doesn't have any screenshots or anything like that. But what it does, it's very clear, sort of, this is a new feature. It updates some dependencies, just kind of like verifying that the acceptance criteria were met. It talks about which issue it closes, so it's links to that, which is nice. That shows up over here as well. And then, it has a description. There's nice formatting, so I can tell what things are actual code, like what, if I see Firestore collection in the code, I expect it to be a capital F, capital C, one word, all those kinds of things. And then it actually links out to documentation of some of the things that are, some of the concepts that are used. So it makes it easy for me as a reviewer to be like, oh, they're using Firestore collection. I don't remember what the API is, but I can just click here and go off and see that really easily. So, and it even leaves a to-do here. So there was something that, they didn't quite get to, so kind of documents that as well. So yeah, this is a nice one. I mean, the only thing that would make it a little bit better would be just a screenshot or something. But other than that, it's great. I guess it's kind of hard to screenshot connecting an app to Firebase. So yeah, so that's PRs. And then the last thing we'll talk about is comments in code. So this is something that, I don't know, Joey, if you found this, but it's like surprisingly controversial, like commenting, right?
Yeah, anytime there's like comments in any code I see, there's usually someone on my team that asks if we can remove it.
Yeah, okay, well, so, yeah, there are schools of thought about comments in code. So, so the purpose for, my perspective is that the purpose of comments is it gives your team context while they're looking at the code. Like it's kind of, you're in documentation over here, but you're looking at the code over here. But the code, you can actually have comments in there that help the person understand what they're looking at, and kind of just make it easier to understand, right? Some of the controversy is like some people, they're adamant that code should be self-documenting, right? So if you're writing code that people can't just understand by looking at it, you need to like refactor that code just to be simpler to read. And that's fine for the code most of the time, not always, especially like regular expressions as an example, where it's really hard to sometimes to get it to do the thing you want and be really easy to understand. Like that's, if you've done anything with regular expressions, you go back and look at it later and you're like, ooh, okay. And you have to like kind of re-parse it in your brain, right? But a lot of code, if you're doing, there's branching or there's different things going on, like the code itself, yeah, that can be mostly self-documenting. But the thing that's harder to do that with is what are the decisions behind the code? Like why did the person do this? There might be a business reason. There might be like, we know this is suboptimal. We're going to come back to it. There's all kinds of sort of context that that could be in place that is just not apparent by looking at the code itself. So I guess I'll go to the next slide and then I'll show the example. But so what you should write is focusing on the why the code was written rather than what the code does. Because usually you can look at code and kind of figure out what it's doing. It has this input, has that output, that kind of thing. But the why is a lot less apparent. So here's a really good example of a comment that I would hope the people at your work, Joey, would not say to remove. So this is in the Reach UI library. So default index does not equal null, and then if multiple else, and so it's array is array, default index, and do something. There's it's kind of a lot going on. It's like this double question mark thing, which I try to avoid. But anyway, if multiple is set to true, we need to make sure the default index is an array, and vice versa. We'll handle console warnings on our prototypes, but this will at least keep the component from blowing up. So it's like, oh, okay, this is actually really important. Like when I read that, I'm like, oh, right, well, I'm gonna have to like, if I'm gonna change this, I better write a test first. It could blow things up. All right, well, yeah, I don't, if I'm gonna change this to something like this double question mark thing to something that's maybe easier to read, I'm gonna pin this thing down with tests before I do it to make sure that it's still behaving in the same way. So, so that's a really nice example. there are, so I guess the thing we're not talking about is examples of, comments that, you don't want, right? So, a comment that you wouldn't want would be, I don't know, like you wouldn't, like before this line 155, it says if not is controlled. You wouldn't want a comment that says, if it's not controlled, do this stuff.
Right.
Like, that'd be a terrible comment, right? Because it's not telling you anything you can't just like, that's pretty apparent what's going on. You might not know what is controlled means exactly, but you can kind of figure that out by moving up the page. So anyway, I think you probably get the point. So focus on the why rather than the what. If people tell you to remove a comment, consider what they're saying, but also like, if it's something where you can see like, oh, this is kind of a tricky thing. 6 months, if I have to come back and maintain this 6 months from now, right? Am I going to remember this little, this kind of clever code that I put together? So, so that's a bit about it. I guess I'd love to hear y'all's experience with all the kind of communications things that we talked about here. So, documentation, pull requests, comments. What has your experience with that been like? Like one thing that you've been doing a lot lately is you're in the Firestore docs. Like, what is that like? I mean, those docs are thorough, but are you finding them easy to understand and read? Like, is it helpful? I'd love to just hear any of y'all's thoughts.
I am a big fan of Firestore docs. Honestly, having zero knowledge on what it is, how it works, what it's all about, going through the docs, seeing the examples, seeing the videos that they provide helped me a lot. So cheers to them.
Nice. I would hope Google would have the resources to have good docs.
On the other hand, PayPal's documentation frustrates me so much. It is so fragmented. Yeah. It is just, it's like the individual documents are written pretty well, but like everything links into different implementations of the exact same problem. And
I think like also like a solid like example of like good documentation that would be applicable to this cohort, because y'all are using Material UI now, is the Material UI docs. Those are my favorite docs because the way they structure it, they have the component documentation, and then if you want to know more about the component and how you can use it to make it your own, they have the API documentation for the component, and the examples they have are great. That is, I think, amazing documentation.
That's what I've been using for work, and since I'm the only web dev, it's been great. Infinitely helpful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since we're talking about nice things, it's interesting to see how code is on the data engineering side, which is kind of where I've been before, and I am and have been. And it's because there's no PRs really in that sense. It's a different workflow. Like there's no, I mean, you're not like uploading your code to GitHub. Not that we don't have branching, and it's more like Bitbucket or just a local Git type thing. It's a different implementation. But I've seen a code comment that said, not sure if this should be here, might break, maybe remove. I said, okay, right?
Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, it hasn't broken. What? So at least, thanks for that. I think that and then experiencing documentation on the data engineering side is not even I don't really think it's not really a thing like that. I mean,
don't get me started on data engineering documentation.
Well, yeah,
oh my,
yeah, like I never even considered it until recently. Um, but I realized that I've also never gone externally to to learn about a thing. Like I just start using the thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then whoever was there and decided that they wanted this at the company, then we
Mm-hmm.
talk about how we use it, and we just use these particular things because this is what you want. So it's a weird thing. Now onto the traditional software engineering side, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of helpful documentation. I like to use like full blown templates that people create. And even like Volha was talking about the Firestore documentation, they have a sample project, and that's what I started off using was their sample project. I don't know what I think it was something food related too. So it was like I'll just look at this and I will work my way back to I think I used it for the connection to understand how that worked and all that type of stuff. But yeah, having an actual project that implements this technology is like, well, here we go. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah,
I've
I've
seen some
never.
stuff in. Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Joey.
I
Go
was
for
just
it.
gonna say I've never actually seen like data engineering like repos before or code, so I don't. I've like written like a few things using like Panda and Python, but like I've never written like production stuff, data engineering stuff. So I'd actually be curious to see what that looks like.
I just kind of explained it, you know. Well, the other
Yeah.
thing is that you can't really put it on GitHub like that. Like, so you talked about like pandas and like so these libraries, but typically that's more on the data science side. But
Oh, okay.
on the actual data engineering foundation to build, like, because you need before you can use pandas, like you have to have some data from somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so get that some data from somewhere place when you're building that, um, it just doesn't have and it's also it doesn't have the nice branding that software engineering gets, so that it doesn't get, but it gets tons of marketing. It's like we're data driven, and it's like, okay, so you want to use us, but you don't want to help us.
Yeah.
Yeah, try looking on Stack Overflow for your issue and it being resolved, and you will be very depressed.
Yeah,
I saw some
it's
stuff in the chat about
tribal knowledge, or what do you call
about
it? Institutional knowledge. Institution. I don't
sorry, what
remember
about
what
it?
it said on the slide,
Oh,
Andrew, because I call it tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's we call it institutional, whatever it said on the slide, institutional.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really
Same
just
thing.
like
Yeah.
so and so knows it, and it's like, okay, so talk to so and so. But especially with this, I feel like the asterisks of this, which you didn't ask for. It's like I do unsolicited advice, right? Which is like how important this is for remote work,
Mm-hmm.
because now if so
Yeah.
and so is the only one who knows it, well then what happened if so and so is here and you can't reach them,
Mm-hmm.
and they their kids are screaming in the background, like they take a day off. No, it's really, like all these,
Oh,
real
sure. Yeah.
life
Yeah.
things that are happening right there, and now you
Yeah.
can't reach them. And then it's like, so then what do you do when you're
Mm-hmm.
at this impasse
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean, all
you're the
the
only one who knows it?
everything we talked about is probably times 10 when you're remote.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. I saw some stuff in the chat about writing or technical writing too. So um, Alejandro, who's another mentor for Collab Lab, really loves this book. Pardon the French, Writing Without Bullshit. So it's he
The
read it
title
and
is
he's just
great.
like, yeah, I mean, it kind of gets to the point, doesn't it? So he read it and he can't recommend it enough. So we actually have a whole course at Zapier on writing. Powerful writing is what they call the course, because it really, especially in a remote org, it really does. It kind of accelerates your career at the same time that because it's helping your teams get stuff done, more effectively. So,
Oh yeah,
yep,
that's awesome.
communication, super important.
So I'll definitely check that book out. Like
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah, thanks for
All
sharing
right.
that, Andrew.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
thank you
sure.
so much. It was really great conversation about communication.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I feel like that's the best use of a standing microphone desk situation that I've seen.
You
Which
to
is like,
like
Yeah.
which
walk
is
around.
Oh
right.
yeah, it's
Cause
really
like,
freeing
yeah,
actually. I
Making
have
me
so
feel
much
bad
room
about sitting down on
for
my standing desk.
activities. Like,
yeah.
wow.
Like I was like, I haven't seen anybody dance before, so that's there you go. That's what you should
Yeah.
be able to do.
Okay, so now that we've gone through everything, I guess let's go maybe through the project and then we'll go through the issues just to see where we're at.
Yeah.
Oh, I clicked on the wrong project. Okay. Let's go here, back to here, share. Is that what I want to share? Yes. All right. So I guess let's take a look at the current issues that we already have. It looks like a couple of these are closed, so
I think if you
can-
refresh,
if I
I think-
refresh,
I
did
think
you
the
just do something?
I think the duplicate items was already peer reviewed and that was merged.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just drag everything to done. I think these are all closed, right? A 6, 8. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then this is also done.
Just right before this meeting.
Yep.
The buzz of
Mm-hmm.
meeting.
Okay, and then the rest of these are linked. These two are the ones. Well, one is 7, and the
There's
other
2
one
7s.
and 2 10s, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I'm
so
a bit confused here.
we need to move
One's the
9.
issue and one's the PR.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
I'm so 9. Where is 9?
9's still on the
Oh,
to do,
over
even
here.
though the pull request is up.
Does it not? It doesn't get automatically dragged. I guess that
I
hasn't
think
been.
I think I messed up with the pull request because I think Kathy showed me how to make it automatically drag last time you were working. I needed to actually link the
Okay.
issue. Yeah, that's my
Okay.
fault.
Cool. So this number 8 is that done and merged? Because it says the issue is
Let me
closed.
check the backlog or the board. Pull request for number 8. I see number 7. The welcome prompt when it's empty.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a
then
merge
mark an
conflict though.
item. For this one, it says it's already been merged for number 8. So
Yeah, I
eight
merged
is
it.
done.
Okay, that one's good to go
Okay.
then.
So 7 linked pull requests. So these are both still open.
Yeah, so
Are these
7,
both
9, and 10
still-
are still open.
Yeah, 7
Okay.
had a very minor merge conflict, and
Okay.
I fixed it, but I just left it open for now because
Is
like the
7
timing when
already
I did it.
peer approved?
For the most part, I
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
Well, no. So 7 is not peer approved by me, but that was during my off week.
Oh right, is that one?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, don't worry
it's
about
not
that
gonna
one.
happen.
So,
Got it, got
so
it.
it's basically
Okay.
peer approved.
Sweet. I'll do the merge once we're done here then.
And then, yeah, merge conflicts, and then you can ping us to take a look at that. And then
Okay, sweet.
9 and 10 are the ones from this week, correct?
Mhm.
And these ones, have the peer reviews already been finished, or are they still in progress?
I need to do mine for
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some
Okay.
progress. This week was a little yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. I just want to make sure the board reflects where we are, so that whenever you all need our input, that we know when to do it. Okay.
I'm so glad that we're so much closer than before. It was like, oh my God, can we do number 3?
Yeah, this is an
And
improvement.
Boha and I will ping you as soon as we know, as soon as we get the other peer reviews, unless you guys want to jump
Okay.
the
Sounds
line.
good.
So it's up to you. And I think
Sounds good.
9 just came through recently before the meeting, and I started to look at it, but I'll finish it today for sure.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, that we did that kind of it drops kind of late.
I was about to say,
No,
it dropped
that wasn't my
early
point,
this
Brandon.
morning.
I was just saying
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It
my
dropped.
internet, I
It
can't
dropped
tell you when I
yesterday
get
Pacific
things.
time. Brandon's like, do you know
Things
how
are
late it is
slower over here in
here?
Georgia.
I'm like, it's
I'm falling asleep on myself, caffeine withdrawals. And it's like, bro.
Yeah. This is an exaggeration that's happening here. And
Of
it's like
course.
it's like 12 o'clock. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it's 12 o'clock on Saturday. Like, it's so late. Oh my God.
It's 12 o'clock on my
It's
weekend.
not just you. Steph was doing the
Okay.
same thing to me, man. I was like up at 2, 3 in the morning, and she's like, "It's only midnight." I was like, "It is 2 in the morning."
Yeah.
Oh, I go to bed by 10:30. This is late for me.
I
That's what I'm
can
saying,
help it.
bro.
I bought me a I bought a 12-pack of Red Bull Yellow, so
Yeah.
I'm prepared for this week.
So you're
Steph.
prepared now.
So she have to play. I feel like we need to separate so we can know which Red Bull, like what Kathy's drinking. Like, is it the Mountain Dew Red? Is the Red Bull Yellow now? Like, are you voting?
I got the Red Bull Yellow and a regular Mountain Dew. That's what I'm on.
You should just like take a pic
The red didn't
at the
come
beginning of every week and just post it in the Slack.
Like,
That would be great.
That's
what
true.
are
And you know what's
drinking?
really sad? That's on top of like my usual 4 to 5 cups of coffee a day. Like that's 4 to
Yeah,
5
you gotta
cups of
do what you gotta
coffee
do.
is my standard.
Caffeine
Monka
machine.
ass.
What's your heart?
I'm a full
Okay,
blown
okay,
addict.
okay,
Bless your
okay.
heart.
Okay, everyone. We got 2 issues to go. We're a little bit over time. So
Okay,
let's get
all
these
right,
issues
all right.
over. I can
Yeah.
stop the recording afterwards, and then we can do our usual chit chat.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have our 2 issues this week. As a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list so that my list isn't cluttered with items I don't want to buy in the future. And then let's see, the AC for this is the user is able to delete an item from the shopping list. Before deleting, prompt the user to confirm that they really want to delete and they don't accidentally like click it or like in their pocket it clicks. And then deletion should cause the associated records in the database to be deleted. And then issue number 12 is, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each of them again so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. So basically, it's just the way to order on the list page.
Yep.
And so items and lists are shown as visually distinct for each of the categories. And then the items should be sorted by estimated number of days until next purchase. And then the items with the same number of estimated days until next purchase should be sorted alphabetically. And then items in the different states should be described distinctly by a screen reader. So making accessibility like a key point of this list. Are there any questions for the issues or any takers? Because what are the groups again this week? Let's take a look.
I think
here.
it's Voha and me this week. I'm not sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Steph and I with my Red Bull Yellow.
11.
Yeah. It's here, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's full on Brandon, Kathy, and Steph. So, who wants what?
We want 11.
Go. Okay. 11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Done and done.
Steph and Kathy. And 12 is and Brandon. All right. Are there any questions for the issues that any of you all can think of for right now?
I'm good, thanks.
I can never
Yeah.
tell when I'm on mute or when I'm not, so just like talk.
Yeah, it's okay. You can let it marinate, and then you can come back.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit you up in Slack.
Yeah, don't worry about
Can
it.
I just say like something about, this is a delete item, sorry. The other one about the ordering, sometimes people get hung up on it a little bit. Like there's misconceptions about what that means, so.
Yeah. But yeah, so thanks everyone for the weekly sync. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Thanks everyone. Demos were great. Thank you, Andrew, for the awesome
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks to the
learning module.
Thank you.
And thanks, Joey, for leading demos and
No problem.
everyone's
Thank you
demos
for
and everything.
doing everything else.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Beep, beep.
So it was a great meeting. I'm going to stop recording now. So bye, YouTube.